Baba, what's going on here? Bayomi's voice cut through the room like a blade, shattering the warmth and laughter that had filled the air just moments earlier. All eyes were on her, their expressions ranging from confusion to outright disbelief. On the tiled floor lay a golden picture frame which had slipped from her bag just moments ago when they were saying their goodbyes. Baba froze, her heart pounded in her chest. How had it come to this? Just hours ago, she had walked into her fiancé Abayomi's parents' home with a singular goal to make the perfect first impression. Now, she stood at the center of a storm she couldn't explain. It had all started so beautifully. The dining table was a picture of abundance, adorned with delicious meals. Stories and laughter flowed effortlessly. "You are truly blessed, Abayomi," Mrs. Waziri had said, her voice kind and warm as she placed the hand over Baba's hand. "This one's a keeper." Baba had blushed, glancing at Abayomi, who gave her a reassuring smile that melted her nerves. "Thank you, Mrs. Waziri. I'm lucky to have him too." She couldn't remember when she had slipped the picture frame into her bag. Now, with the frame exposed, Mrs. Waziri gasped, and Mr. Waziri's eyes hardened with disappointment. Abayomi's voice was thick with hurt. "What is this, Baba? You took my mother's frame? So you're a thief. What else have you been taking?" Baba's mouth opened, but no words came. The silence stretched as shame consumed her. Without another word, Abayomi turned and walked away, his steps echoing through the house. The room descended into a deafening silence, broken only by the faint hum of the ceiling fan. Baba stood rooted to the spot, her shame laid bare as the family exchanged looks of disgust and disappointment. Somewhere in the depths of her mind, a single thought took hold. How did it come to this? Later that night, Baba sat alone in her apartment. Baba stared at the collection of unfamiliar items piled on her coffee table. Pens, notepads, a small trinket box she vaguely recognized from the office reception desk, and even a baby rattle. She had noticed how her work colleagues had started whispering behind her back. At first, she dismissed it as simple forgetfulness. "I must have taken it by mistake," she had told herself on numerous occasions. But now, after the humiliating incident at Abayomi's house, she could no longer ignore the truth. Something was seriously wrong. When had this habit even begun? She had never been this way, and it wasn't as though she needed a thing she took. Tears welled in her eyes. "What am I becoming?" she whispered into the silence. Baba returned to work the next morning, her shoulders squared, determined to bury herself in work and pretend yesterday never happened. But the atmosphere was different. Whispers followed her as she walked through the office, colleagues exchanging glances and gesturing toward her desk. Baba tried to ignore it, but the unease in her gut only grew. But before she could make her way to her desk, "Baba," the CEO, Mr. Mensah's voice cut through the hum of chatter, stopping her in her tracks. He stormed towards her, his face a mask of anger. "Where's my watch?" Her mind raced. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. "Check her bag," someone murmured, their voice laced with accusation. Baba's breath hitched. No, you just can't." But it was too late. Mr. Mensah reached into her bag and pulled out the gold wristwatch, the one she'd seen him wearing every day since she started at the firm. The room fell silent, the weight of the moment suffocating. I didn't take it. I wouldn't," Baba said shakingly. He studied her carefully, his expression unreadable. "You've always been one of my most reliable employees, but lately," Mr. Mensah said, shaking his head. "Pack your things. You are indefinitely suspended," Mr. Mensah said, his stone eyes cold. Baba's legs felt like jelly as she gathered her belongings, her co-workers' eyes boring into her back. Some looked away in discomfort, others stared openly. their expressions a mix of pity and disdain. The elevator ride down felt endless, and by the time she reached the streets, tears streamed freely down her face. She clutched her bag tightly, her mind a whirlpool of confusion and fear. I didn't take it, did I? That evening, Baba sat on her bed, the weight of the past few weeks pressing down on her. Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring her vision as she replayed the events that had unraveled her life. As if the humiliation at work hadn't been enough, Abayomi had called her on the drive home to end their engagement. His voice, cold and detached, echoed in her mind. I can't trust you anymore. Baba tried to understand how her life had unraveled so quickly. She was drowning in a sea of shame. Baba's phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. She hesitated before picking it up, seeing Lamisa's name flash on the screen. Hello? Her voice was small, barely a whisper. Baba, where have you been? Lamisi's tone was a mix of concern and gentle reproach. You've missed church and choir practice for weeks. Is everything okay? Baba sighed, her fingers tracing circles on the bed. I'm fine, she lied, though the crack in her voice betrayed her. Baba, Lamisi pressed, her voice softening. Why don't you come to church with me this Sunday? It's been too long. Church. The very thought of going back filled Baba with a strange blend of longing and dread. What if it happened again? What if she couldn't control herself and took something? The shame she'd feel was almost unbearable to imagine. But Lamisi wouldn't give up. All right, she murmured at last, realizing Lamisi wasn't going to take no for an answer. Her best friend's persistence had worn her down. I'll come. The service was beautiful, and for a brief moment, Baba felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in weeks. It was as if her troubles had been left at the door, until they weren't. After service, Baba's heart pounded as Lamisi's horrified voice broke through her trance. Baba, Lamisi whispered, her voice quivering with disbelief as she stared at Baba, slipping the microphone into her bag. Her eyes wide darted around nervously before locking it onto Baba's. What are you doing? I don't know, Baba stammered, tears welling in her eyes. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she fumbled to return the microphone to its stand. Her hand shook so badly she almost dropped it. The choir director, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, watched from across the room. Baba could feel the weight of her disapproving stare. Is there a problem? The woman called out, her tone sharp. No, ma, Lamisi replied quickly, stepping in front of Baba as if to shield her from further scrutiny. We were just leaving. The two women hurried to the corner of the sanctuary, away from prying ears, Baba barely holding back her sobs. Lamisi grabbed Baba by the shoulders, her grip firm, but her eyes filled with urgency. Baba, what's going on? She demanded, her voice trembling. I don't know, Baba cried, her voice breaking as tears streamed down her face. I've been taking things, Lamisi. I don't even want them. I don't even need them. It's like I'm not in control anymore. Her words came in a flood, raw and unfiltered. I got suspended from work, and Abayomi broke up with me because of it. Everything is falling apart. Lamisi's expression softened, her concern evident as she released Baba's shoulders and gently shook her hand. There has to be more to this, Baba. How could you keep all this to yourself? Aren't we friends anymore? Maybe you. She said quietly, her voice laced with hurt. You need help, Baba. Not just any help, spiritual help. Something bigger is going on here, Baba. Baba wiped her tears, her chest heaving. You think I'm cursed? Before Lamisi could answer her, a group of church members surrounded them, their faces a mixture of disbelief and anger. Someone pulled at the choir rope poking out from Baba's bag, the bright red fabric glaring out of place in the morning sun. Baba, what's the meaning of this? one elder demanded, his voice thick with accusation. Baba's heart sank as murmurs rippled through the group. She tried to take the microphone, and now this? Someone whispered. Why would you steal from the house of God? Another voice shot out, laced with contempt. Baba opened her mouth to explain, to say something, but the words lodged in her throat. The crowd pressed closer, their indignation swelling. She should be banned from the church, an elderly woman spat, clutching her handbag as though Baba might take that too. A thief in the house of the Lord? A deacon scoffed, shaking his head in disgust. Baba's vision blurred as shame engulfed her. She clutched at the hem of her blouse, her hands trembling. Just as the whispers and scorn reached a fevered pitch, a powerful voice rang out above the chaos. Enough! The crowd fell silent, parting to reveal Pastor T. His expression a mix of disappointment and compassion. He stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over the congregation. This is not how we treat one of our own, he said firmly. But Pastor, someone began, only to be silenced by his raised hand. Baba is clearly struggling, Pastor T continued. She doesn't need our condemnation. She needs our prayers. Turning to Baba, his voice softened. My child, will you allow us to pray for you? Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, her knees buckling under the weight of her shame. The pastor placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. We will stand with you, he said gently. The congregation pressed closer, forming a protective circle around Baba as Pastor T's voice filled the air, calm yet commanding. Heavenly Father, we seek your light in this moment of darkness. Reveal what is hidden and break every chain that binds your child. Baba knelt, her body trembling, unsure of what was happening. A strange heaviness seemed to settle over her, like an unseen weight pressing down on her shoulders. After the prayer ended, Pastor T studied her intently, his sharp gaze cutting through her confusion. Baba, he said firmly, has anyone given you a mirror recently? The question sent a chill down her spine. She hesitated, then nodded, her voice barely a whisper. Yes, my cousin. She gave me a mirror a few weeks ago. The pastor's expression darkened, and the murmurs in the congregation grew louder. Where is it? He asked. Baba's hand shook as she reached for her bag. The mirror had seemed so harmless, so beautiful, when she'd first received it. She'd admired its ornate frame and had kept it with her ever since. Pulling it out, she held it up, her heart pounding. Place it on the ground, Pastor T instructed. His tone left no room for argument. As she set the mirror down, the pastor and the congregation began to pray again, their voices rising in fervent chorus. The air in the room seemed to grow thicker, charged with an almost tangible energy. Then, without warning, the mirror began to glow faintly, a strange sinister light flickering within its surface. The prayers intensified, and suddenly, flames erupted around the mirror, engulfing it completely. Baba gasped, falling backward as a dark moth shot out of the fire, its wings beating furiously. The creature fluttered in the air for a moment, then disintegrated into ash before their eyes. The flames died down, leaving nothing but scorched remnants of the once pristine mirror. Baba clutched her chest, her breath ragged. She stared at the ashes, terror gripping her heart. What was that? She whispered. Pastor T placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression grave. The spell that was placed on you came through that mirror, but it's broken now. You are free, my child. Tears welled in Baba's eyes. Pastor T's next words struck Baba like a thunderbolt. Baba, he began, his voice heavy with sorrow. Your cousin was not acting alone. She was following your mother's instructions. Baba's breath hitched, and her vision blurred with fresh tears. My mother? She whispered, disbelief mingling with the growing ache in her chest. Yes, Pastor T confirmed, his expression both compassionate and stern. Your mother was consumed by envy. She felt displaced after you gathered the elders and taught them how to invest their cocoa earnings in stocks and bonds. As their wealth grew, so did their admiration for you. They looked to you for guidance. Guidance she felt was hers to give as the family matriarch. The congregation erupted into murmurs. Their faces showed a mix of shock and disbelief. How could the mother do such a thing? Someone whispered harshly. Barbara's body began to tremble. The betrayal cut deeper than anything she had endured. She broke into soft heaving sobs, completely overwhelmed. My own mother? She thought. Pastor T knelt beside her, placing a firm yet gentle hand on her shoulders. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones the enemy uses to bring us down, he said solemnly. But forgiveness, Baba, is your key to freedom. Baba looked at him, tears streaming down her face. She didn't know how to process the revelation, much less forgive. Moments later, Baba's phone vibrated in her purse, jolting her from her daze. With shaky hands, she answered. Baba, came the frantic, urgent voice of a distant cousin. Something terrible has happened. Baba's heart sank. What is it? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. It's Ada, the cousin said breathlessly. She's running mad in the street screaming, I did it, I did it. And your mother, your mother, she suffered a stroke. Baba clutched the edge of the pew for support. The phone slipped from her trembling hands, clattering to the floor. Pastor T stepped closer, steadying her with a firm hand on her shoulder. His expression was grave, yet filled with compassion. For what a person sows, so shall he reap, he said quietly, his voice a sober echo in the now silent church. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, mingling with the murmurs of the stunned congregation. Baba's mind raced, grappling with the overwhelming tide of emotions. With the breaking of the spell came new beginnings. Out of nowhere, Baba received an offer for a job she hadn't even applied for. The job came with better pay and conditions than she'd ever imagined, all thanks to the glowing recommendation of a former client. Though her relationship with Abayomi was over, she felt a newfound sense of peace and hope for the journey ahead. As she wheeled her mother through the hospital garden, the older woman finally broke the silence. I'm sorry, Baba, she said, her voice trembling. I let envy blind me. Can you ever forgive me? Baba paused, her hands steady on the wheelchair handles. She smiled sadly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I forgave you the moment I chose to take care of you, Mama. Let's focus on healing now. The lesson learned is that, in the end, forgiveness isn't for the one who hurts you, it's for yourself. Jealousy destroys, but love rebuilds. Let's seek to rebuild. Have you suffered any such experience in the past? Let us know in the comments. We love to hear from you. Hi fam, thanks for watching and hope you enjoyed the story. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing from you. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button so you don't miss any of your favorite African folktales. Until next time, it's bye from us at Apenthene African Stories.